Welcome to this session. So the session will explore many issues in relation to carbon markets and carbon mechanism. And we bring into the stage Cristina Reyes from the Ministry of Finance, Brazil. And then we have Luca Lore from IEA, International Energy Agency, and then Nguyen Chi from Vietnam. And online we have a Brazilian colleague who is sitting in Paris with 20 degrees, maybe a gap in temperature, Guilherme, and Thomas Melonio as well from Agence Française de Développement. So during this session, we will try to address maybe an overview from kind of regulators like IEA on that kind of markets who do a lot of work about harmonization. And on the regulation side as well, I think Cristina on the Brazilian case, and Chi on the journey of Vietnam towards setting a carbon market. And by carbon market, I would like just to emphasize that I know that carbon market during that COP we have been speaking a lot about voluntary carbon markets, but here I would like to just make a precision that carbon market is understood here as ETS, which is quota markets, and maybe also border adjustment mechanism will be discussed. And obviously we know that compliance market and voluntary markets are getting also more and more connecting one to each other depending on different countries. So there is many exceptions of carbon markets. But just to come back to the ETS, so we will first discuss, I think, during this session how Brazil is aiming, is already in its journey to on this market regulations, and what are the pitfalls that any country setting this market should avoid. What is a well-designed ETS? And if a carbon market can drive low carbon industries and innovation as well. Whatever, I think we have also the competitiveness issue, obviously, and the risk of relocation, and last but not least, the inflationary risks, especially for low-income households. So I turn to you, Christina, to elaborate on the Brazilian case. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you in this event organized by the French Agency of Development with partners. I want to say hi to my colleagues here, both lively and online. So thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us in COP Belém. And I hope you're having a nice day, although I know it's very, very warm. But the things that we are doing here are very important, and we are starting to move on in this agenda related to fighting climate change. So I was just nominated the Secretary for Carbon Markets at the Ministry of Finance in Brazil, and I'm in charge of the implementation of the law that establishes the emission trading systems here in Brazil. So the law has one article saying what are the periods and the deadlines for implementing the ETS. We have 5 phases of implementation, and we hope that in 2030 or 2031 in Brazil we are going to be selling allowances. So the Secretariat has to, in these first phases of implementation, to set the scope of the system, right? the scope related to the gases that are going to be included, and related to the sectors that will be included. We also have to define how we are going to approach the companies, either in terms of activities, in terms of installations, or sources. And so these kind of regulatory definitions are the number one priority of the Secretariat, because they will then make us starting the process of making all the MRP system, the monitoring, reporting, and verification system. Then we have to establish the central registry of the system, the one that is going to receive the emissions and the reports. And we have to also establish a engagement plan so that the stakeholders related to both supply and demand sides of compliance and of voluntary carbon markets are correctly participating, so that we are all in the same page. In Brazil, we also, the law allows for offsets, so the emission trading system will be able to accept carbon credits generated from the supply of the voluntary carbon markets, and with the condition of reaching, of contributing with additionality, and the Secretariat will establish the criteria for integrity for those credits that will be considered as offsets. So in Brazil, there are many challenges for this implementation, both related to the ecosystem of carbon, who are the verifiers, what are the methodologies that they use, are they really taking account the reality, the productive structure of Brazil, our better energy efficiency compared to other countries? Are we looking into new technologies that make sense to our reality, such as the biofuels, carbon capture, CCUS, and so forth? So those kind of decisions will be done next year. And in this year, we still have to finish the governance of the ETS system. There is a technical committee with the participation of the civil society that is established in the law. So we are going to publish a decree within some days, I would say, that will set this technical committee. That's very important, because then the private sector, academia, social movements, NGOs, and philanthropies, and others will have the opportunity to participate, to contribute, to dialogue on the way that we are doing the regulation. So in Brazil, there is a big expectation for the carbon markets. Everybody says, and many studies show that Brazil has a big potential, both in producing carbon credits, but also selling and trading carbon credits. There will be soon a definition on the international transfers. This has to be made by the national designated authority. It's not by the management body of the ETS system. But this decision will also impact the Secretariat, because every ITMO, international transfer, will have to be registered, and its methodology has to be accredited in the Secretariat. And here in COP Belém, there'll be very nice announcements related to ITMOs. So it's very likely that at least 2 or 3 memorandums of understandings will be signed soon between Brazil and key partners. And we hope that in next year we publish a norm that explains how the international transfers are going to be made. So many things going on, and besides all this, we are also pushing the international cooperation related to compliance carbon markets. So here during the summit and COP30 summit, President Lula has announced the Open Coalition for Compliance Carbon Markets, which is a initiative from the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that seeks to improve and to strengthen collaboration between countries that have those kind of carbon pricing mechanisms, and also discuss methodologies such as carbon accounting, such as MIV systems, offset usages, and so that we can prevent, then answering your question, the rise of carbon border adjustment mechanisms that can jeopardize investment and trade in a very near future. So instead of creating a world full of non-tariff barriers such as CBAM, the idea is to talk about how we can cooperate. We understand the importance of avoiding carbon leakage, but we can try to discuss the methodologies related to carbon accounting, on carbon border adjustments, and so forth. So this is a very positive new achievement already of the COP30, and the coalition unites the European Union, Brazil, China, Canada, Mexico, Chile, Zambia, Rwanda, and many other countries. We are already with around 20 countries. So I'm very glad to say that we are at this stage, and the day after tomorrow, we will have the first official meeting of the coalition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And I wanted first to thank very much AFD for inviting us to this panel, but also congratulate Brazil for the really great effort that you're doing and your leadership on carbon markets at the moment. It's good to see that that we have so much momentum around it. Maybe, yeah, coming to your question, I think it's good to see from the perspective of the IEA, the International Energy Agency, what do we mean by the interoperability of carbon markets and how this connects with the coalition. We know that at the moment, most of carbon markets are actually concentrated in advanced economies. We know that 99% of the revenues from carbon markets from last year, they come from they are in advanced economies, but there is a lot of momentum also in emerging markets, such as Brazil, to bring forward carbon markets, and so also in response to CBAM, but also motivated for the economic efficiency of carbon markets. And the IEA has been working on carbon markets for the last 25 years, and so today I would like to show a little bit and to tell you a little bit the experience that we have and the lesson learned that we have matured over this period, also by working directly with governments, including Brazil, in the last few years. First of all, what do we mean by interoperability? So it's basically a sort of a linkage of carbon markets. So we want to know carbon markets. Once again, we come back to the definition of ETSs, mostly emission trading systems. And the idea is that carbon markets can work together. They can be linked in a way that basically allowances can be used interchangeably in a way from one system to the other. And this is the case. We've already seen some examples of linkages between, for instance, the EU ETS and the Switzerland ETS, or the California cap and trade and the Quebec cap and trade as well. Why there is an important push towards linking? Why would jurisdiction would like to link, and I think it's also one of the rationale behind the open coalition. First of all, is the cost efficiency, and also the large abatement pools, meaning that you can achieve much more by linking. You can increase the pool of instruments and allowances that are within the jurisdiction. Then there is the price stability and the liquidity, so you can increase the liquidity in both markets, and this gives generally a more stable price. And then you can also increase the signal for investment into decarbonization. What do we need to consider when we want to link different ETSs? There are different technical aspect that needs to be considered. The first one is of course, the compatibility of design. I think this is also something that maybe the coalition will also take into account. So the different design of the ETS, there are many different designs. They are by definition local. They change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction because they need to reflect the priorities of each jurisdiction. But so there should be not necessarily 100% match, but at least a sufficiently alignment on different aspects, including, for instance, the scope. Christina was talking about the scope of the Brazil ETS, including gases, but also the sectors. If the ETS has a cap, what's the trajectory of the cap as well? The monitoring, verification, the compliance rules, the use of offsets or not. So there should be already sufficient alignment. Then I come from the energy agency, so the International Energy Agency, so we look at the power sector. At the moment, I'll come to that later, but most of the ETSs, they include the power sector into it. And so whether this is covered and what type of installation is covered is also very important. And then the point of the regulation and the incentives, especially for the power sector, this is important. And then the flow of allowances, like where the allowances will go only from one ETS to another, whether the allowances will be fungible from to be used in one ETS or another. This is very important. Christina also mentioned that the governance is going to be built for the Brazil ETS this year. These are very important issues as well. The governance of the different institutional frameworks that are created would be very important to ensure that the linking requirements are aligned. And then Christina also mentioned about the accounting rules. And the accounting, how the different entities that are covered can account for the allowances is also very, very important. So I was asked to focus on the power sector, which is where my agency is the main focus of our agency. Why do we focus on the power sector? Because power for us, it's heat and electricity, is a major source of emissions worldwide. We count that around in 2024, around 40% of global greenhouse gas emission come from the power sector. And of course, this is very significant, and basically a very large number of ETSs cover the power sector. Last year, we worked with the World Bank and with ICAP, the International Carbon Action Partnership, on a publication that is called Carbon Pricing in the Power Sector, that I invite you to consult online. But basically, we look at different lessons that emerging markets in developing economies that are thinking of designing a new ETS can take into account, especially if they want to cover the power sector. We took a different stance than previous publication, meaning we really wanted to go into the technical details, because the power sector, the design of the carbon pricing in the power sector really depends on the structure of the power sector, meaning there are a lot of different power sector structures. It can be liberalized, it can be with wholesale electricity prices, the supply mix might be different, the degree of the liberalization can vary as well, the consumption patterns can also change. And so what we found out is, for instance, that when we have liberalized markets with a high level of competition, it's easier to implement a carbon price that could be applied to the generation and on the dispatcher stages of the electricity and heat. But on the contrary, if we have instead the state-owned utilities with vertically integrated structures, it's much more difficult to have an ETS. And so in that case, it's much easier to have a carbon tax or a different type of carbon pricing instrument applied. And so this is why this is important, because this, of course, comes into play when we talk about the interoperability for the systems when we want to link and having, for instance, coalitions. And so when we want to link ETSs that have power market system, what do we have to take into account? First, the type of the interconnection and the trade that is within the electricity system. So what type of structures are there in the different power markets of the two countries or jurisdiction they want to link, the different regulatory alignments, and also the electricity market rules, the different thresholds that are taken into account. So for instance, if there are benchmarks for different power sectors, they need to be somehow aligned. I know that this is something that the coalition has put some emphasis on different benchmarks among the different members of the coalitions, for instance, and also the coverage, as we were saying, the scope of the coverage in terms of gases and the system should be very aligned. And then data and MRV, as Christina was saying, is also very, very important. And also the offsets. Now that we're entering the phase of the implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, many countries, including the EU, are now considering to potentially include carbon credits as compliance instruments in lieu of allowances, ETS allowances. So understanding exactly which type of credits, what are the different integrity rules to be put in place is very important. And so there are different practical steps that countries can take into account. First is having a sort of pre-linking assessment, again, looking at the different system design in terms of allocation rules, coverage, etc., what I mentioned before. Christina also mentioned the stakeholder engagements. That's super important. It needs to be done when we are linking the stakeholders, the entities that are covered, the companies that are covered also need to be on board, and we need to have the political buy-in. There needs to be an harmonization of the methodologies that are taken into account, and then maybe starting with a pilot phase, as it was the case, for instance, with the EU and Switzerland ETSs, and then there should be some governance and oversight, and finally also some evaluation. Of course, it doesn't, once again, have to be 100% overlap between the two systems, but it should be aligned just enough. Coming to your last question about what can international institutions such as the International Energy Agency, what we can do, I think we can bring in and we can support governments in trying to think through these practical steps, step by step, into the linking and interoperability and also the forming of a coalition by bringing in data and knowledge sharing with international experience. We can also provide convening power, bringing together different type of stakeholders from, for instance, our membership base and also our association countries. Brazil is one of our esteemed association countries, for instance. And also we can provide, wherever it's needed, capacity building. The IEA has provided in 2021 to EPE some support to the government of Brazil that eventually led as well to the what is now the ETS in Brazil, together with others such as the World Bank and other actors. Maybe I'll pause here, and I'm happy to take questions if they arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chi from Vietnam, Managing Finance, and the topic I will be present today is a process of export listing the carbon market in Vietnam, a work in progress. The first about the chart of the Managing Finance. The establishment of carbon market in general and carbon trading floor in particular is of great concern to the government of Vietnam. We can identify this one of the economic tool to serve environmental protection. Our legal document also have provision related to the establishment of carbon market and carbon trading floor. In this, there are my colleagues at the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment maybe understand more. Unfortunately, due to work schedule, so they know representative of the Ministry of Agriculture Environment today. Therefore, I just want to share more about the role of the Ministry of Finance in building the carbon markets as follow. Firstly, the law of environmental protection passed by the Vietnam National Assembly in 2020 stipulates that the Ministry of Finance shall preside over and coordinate with Ministry and branch to establish a domestic carbon market. As you know, to establish a carbon market require the participation of many ministries and agencies. If only the Ministry of Finance is present, it cannot be done. So, therefore, to carry out this task, we have developed and submit to the Prime Minister for approval the project on establishing and developing a carbon market in Vietnam. This project was approved earlier this year, especially in decision no 2-3 this January 24, 2025 of the Prime Minister. This project had outlined a number of major policy and orientation of establishing and developing a carbon market such as viewpoint, objective, goods, or entity participating in the market, trading platform, service provider, and the most important, the project has given a story of tech community. The Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, Ministry of Construction, Ministry of Industry and Trade, etc. For example, tasks related to the creation and management of goods, especially greenhouse gas emission allowance and carbon credit will be undertaken by the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment. While the establishing of carbon trading floor will be directed by the Ministry of Finance. So the stock exchange and the security depository and clearing corporation. Yeah. The second, to guide the law on the environmental protection in 2022, the government has a degree no 6 2022 on the greenhouse gas emission reduction and ozone layer protection. Recently, the government is also issued degree no honors 19 20 in 2025, amending and supplementing degree 6 2022. In degree, the Ministry of Finance were assigned to establish a carbon market platform. Yeah. To carry out this tech, the Ministry of Finance had draft a degree on domestic carbon trading floor and is submitting to government of Vietnam for consideration and further grade. Yeah. And about the model, the carbon trading model that the Ministry of Finance is building. Yeah. To establish and operate a market in general or trading platform in particular, we believe that four major pillars must be identified, building, including good participant, trading place, and state management agency. Currently, the level framework of the carbon market carbon trading floor is still being to complete based on current regulation and some policy in the project on establishment and develop of the carbon market in Vietnam approved by the Prime Minister. I can briefly share as follow about the commodities on the carbon exchange include greenhouse gas emission allowance and carbon credit. And subject participating in instruction on the carbon market include the subject of greenhouse gas emission quota exchange is the facility allocated allowance and subject in implementing carbon credit exchange are agency and organization in the territory of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. And there are also some organization participating as a transaction support. About regarding carbon trading floor, the Hanoi Stock Exchange Green Bill and provide domestic carbon trading floor service. And the Vietnam Security Depository and Clearing Corporation Green provide depository and transaction statement. Currently, the Ministry of Finance have developed and submit to the government a draft degree on domestic carbon trading floor, which will provide more detailed regulation on this pillar. On state management agency, according to the general principle stipulated in the law of environmental protection, the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment will be the agency organizing the operation of the carbon market. Currently, we are also coordinating with the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment to identify and regulate more especially the responsibility of the Ministry and branch related to the carbon market in general and the carbon exchange in particular. As proposed in the draft degree, we expect that the carbon market in Vietnam will be operational between now to and 2026. Yes, we will probably establish the necessary to operate the carbon exchange immediately after government approves the degree. So, conclusion, I strongly believe that the routable EV is well designed to and beneficial for developing country like Vietnam. So, and I hope this can provide some perspective to other countries on where Vietnam is moving the path developing towards grow ETF and contribute to the overall or objective to the of the table. Thank you.